The parking lot of Henderson's Fresh Market shimmered under the late summer sun like a sheet of foil left out too long. It was one of those August afternoons in Brookdale, Pennsylvania, when the heat didn't shout. It leaned in close and stayed there, heavy and personal, clinging to skin and fabric alike. The sky was bright but washed out, the blue thinned by humidity, clouds stretched lazily as if even they didn't feel like moving fast. Brookdale was the kind of small town that called itself a town proudly, not because it was quaint, but because it was complete. 2 schools, 3 churches, 1 movie theater that still smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and popcorn oil, and Henderson's Fresh Market, the unofficial community hub. If you wanted to know what Brookdale was thinking, feeling, or quietly worrying about, you stood near the automatic doors at Henderson's and waited. That's where Caleb Monroe was at 3:46 p.m., standing beside his sedan with the trunk open, staring at a grocery cart that had suddenly become an enemy. Caleb was 38, tall in a way that suggested he used to play basketball seriously and now only referenced it in stories. He wore khaki shorts, a navy t-shirt advertising a local brewery he rarely visited, and running shoes that had seen better, faster years. His hair was slightly damp from heat, his expression focused with the intensity of someone who believed, truly believed, that careful planning prevented disasters. He had planned this trip carefully. Produce first, frozen last, double-bagged the eggs, heavy items on the bottom. He even remembered the reusable bags, folded neatly in the trunk like obedient assistants. The cart was full but not reckless. A week's worth of groceries for a household of 1 plus occasional guests, chicken breasts, bell peppers, yogurt, cereal, pasta, tomatoes, a loaf of bread still warm from the bakery rack. A watermelon sat proudly in the child seat like a crowned king. Caleb reached for the cart handle, angling it toward the trunk. That's when the wheel caught. It was a subtle thing at first, a slight resistance, the cart refusing to glide as smoothly as expected. Caleb adjusted his grip, gave a firmer push. The wheel locked. The cart tilted. Time slowed in that cinematic way Caleb would later swear was real. The watermelon shifted. No, no, Caleb said quietly, as if reason might intervene. The cart tipped. Groceries spilled. It happened all at once and in cruel sequence. The watermelon rolled free, thudding onto the asphalt and continuing with impressive momentum toward the next parking lane. A bag of apples burst open like a confetti cannon. A carton of eggs hit the ground and surrendered instantly. A loaf of bread bounced, unharmed but offended. A container of yogurt popped its lid, splattering white against grey pavement like abstract art. The sound was unmistakable, plastic, paper, and produce colliding with reality. Caleb froze. Around him, the parking lot paused just long enough to notice. A minivan slowed. Someone gasped. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped in confusion. Oh, come on, Caleb said, hands on his head now, staring at the mess spread across 5 parking spaces like a grocery store crime scene. The watermelon reached the curb and stopped, triumphant. Caleb exhaled slowly, embarrassment rising faster than the heat. He felt every eye, every imaginary judgment. Grown man can't load groceries. Should have parked closer. That's why you don't rush. He knelt, reaching for an apple, then stopped. The apple was already rolling. Across the lot, Maggie, Doyle, 72 and unstoppable, had just exited Henderson's with a single paper bag and a sense of purpose. Maggie wore pressed slacks, orthopedic sandals, and a sleeveless blouse with a subtle floral pattern. Her silver hair was pulled into a bun so neat it looked architectural. She saw the spill and didn't hesitate. Well, she said aloud, marching toward Caleb, that won't do. Caleb looked up, startled. I'm so sorry, I've got it. Maggie waved him off. You've got some of it. We've got the rest. She bent down with the efficiency of someone who had raised 3 children and survived the 1980s without GPS. At the same moment, Jordan Patel, home from college and working a summer shift at Henderson's, burst through the automatic doors carrying a broom he hadn't technically been authorized to take outside. Spill? He asked, already sweeping apples into a neat cluster. Yes, Caleb said weakly. My dignity. Jordan grinned. Happens daily. A car door slammed nearby. Angela Ruiz, a nurse just off a double shift, jogged over, scrubs wrinkled, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Eggs? She asked. Gone, Caleb replied. Angela sighed sympathetically. They never survive. From across the lot, Frank Wilson, retired mechanic and proud owner of the cleanest pickup truck in Brookdale, rolled the watermelon back with his foot. Still good, Frank announced. These things are tougher than they look. A few more people stopped. Someone handed Caleb paper towels. Someone else grabbed spare bags from their trunk. Laughter bubbled up, not cruel, not mocking, but warm, the kind that said we've all been there. Caleb sat back on his heels, stunned. What should have been humiliating was communal. A toddler clapped as apples were retrieved. A teenager filmed briefly, then put the phone away when Maggie shot him a look. Henderson's manager, Paul Emerson, stepped outside, surveyed the scene, and shrugged. "Guess it's a parking lot party," he said. "I'll grab replacements for the eggs." Caleb stood, shaking his head. "You don't have to." Paul was already walking back inside. The mess slowly disappeared. The yogurt was wiped up. The bread was dusted off and declared acceptable. The apples were counted, inspected, and returned. The watermelon was ceremoniously placed back in the cart. When it was over, the parking lot looked ordinary again. Just a few wet patches and the faint smell of produce. Caleb leaned against his car, heart pounding, face warm. "Thank you," he said, meaning it in a way that felt deeper than words. "All of you." Maggie patted his arm. "Honey, groceries spill. People help. That's the order of things." And standing there, surrounded by neighbors he mostly recognized but barely knew, Caleb realized something had shifted. The spill hadn't just made a mess. It had made a moment. The parking lot of Henderson's Fresh Market never fully returned to its original rhythm that afternoon. Even after the yogurt was wiped away and the last apple was returned to its bag with ceremonial care, something lingered in the warm August air, like the echo of laughter after a joke everyone needed more than they realized. Caleb Monroe finished loading what remained of his groceries with help he hadn't asked for but didn't refuse. Maggie Doyle supervised the trunk arrangement like a project manager who trusted no one completely. Frank Wilson insisted on positioning the watermelon for weight distribution. Angela Ruiz handed over an extra reusable bag she kept folded in her car, just in case, and Jordan Patel returned the broom inside, slightly disappointed the chaos had ended so quickly. Caleb closed the trunk at last and leaned back against his car, unsure what to do next. The moment had technically passed. People had places to be, dinners to cook, shifts to start, but no one moved right away. "Well," Paul Emerson said, hands on hips, surveying the small crowd, "anyone else feel like they accidentally joined a club?" Maggie laughed. "If this is a club, I want meetings with snacks." Angela checked her watch. "I should go home and sleep for 12 hours, she said, then paused. But this was nice. Nice wasn't a word Caleb would have expected for a grocery store spill. But it fit. The embarrassment had softened into something almost buoyant. The parking lot felt less like a place to pass through and more like a place that happened. A little boy, Evan Brooks, maybe 4, tugged on his father's hand and pointed at Caleb's car. "That's the watermelon guy." Caleb laughed. "That's me now, I guess." His father, Derek Brooks, smiled apologetically. "You're legendary. We saw the whole thing from aisle 6. The group dispersed slowly, conversations branching off into new directions. Maggie learned that Jordan was studying environmental science. Frank discovered Angela lived 2 streets over. Paul reminded everyone about the store's sidewalk sale happening Saturday, and somehow that turned into a discussion about block parties. Caleb drove home with the windows down, the late afternoon sun slanting low, the town looking sharper somehow, edges defined, colors warmer. Brookdale passed by in familiar snapshots. The brick library with its banner advertising used book sales, the nail salon with mismatched chairs, the row of small houses where porches still matted. At a red light, Caleb glanced at the passenger seat, half expecting another apple to roll out. Instead, he smiled to himself. He didn't feel foolish anymore. He felt connected. Blank. That evening, the Brookdale Community Facebook page lit up. Someone, no one ever admitted who, posted a photo of the parking lot cleanup, carefully framed so no one looked bad, just human. The caption read, "When groceries spill, neighbors show up. Thanks, Brookdale." The comments multiplied. "This made my day. That was my mom helping. We need more of this energy. Shout out to the watermelon survivor." Caleb scrolled through the post at his kitchen table, dinner half eaten, phone lighting his face. He recognized names he'd waved to for years and others he'd never met. He typed a short comment and erased it. Typed again. "Thanks for turning my worst moment of the week into the best." He set the phone down, suddenly tired in the best way. The next morning, Brookdale carried on as usual. Cars lined up at the coffee shop drive-through. Kids waited for buses. Lawns were watered with quiet determination. But there was a subtle shift, something almost imperceptible but real. At Henderson's, Maggie Doyle greeted strangers like old friends. Jordan helped customers carry bags to their cars without being asked. Paul placed a small handwritten sign near the exit. Need help? Just ask. On Thursday evening, Caleb found himself back in the same parking lot, this time returning a shopping cart. He caught the wheel before it snagged and smiled at the memory. Across the lot, Angela Ruiz waved. Frank gave a nod from his truck. Maggie lifted her chin in approval. Caleb realized then what the spill had actually done. It hadn't been about groceries. It had been about permission. Permission to need help. Permission to stop pretending everything was always under control. Permission to let a mess become a meeting point. That Saturday, Brookdale held an impromptu sidewalk cookout outside Henderson's. Folding tables appeared. Someone brought a grill. Kids drew with chalk near the cart corral. Maggie brought cookies. Frank brought chairs. Angela, finally rested, brought music. Caleb arrived with watermelon. When it was cut and passed around, juice dripping down wrists, laughter echoing off the storefront windows, he looked around at faces now familiar and felt something settle in his chest. Life would spill again. Plans would tip. Things would fall apart at the most inconvenient times. But now he knew something he hadn't before. He wouldn't be alone in the cleanup. And sometimes, the mess was the invitation. Spilled Groceries Right Pointing Arrow Community Cleanup Fun is a humorous and heartfelt modern American story about how an ordinary accident in a grocery store parking lot turns into an unexpected act of connection. Through spilled food, shared laughter, and collective kindness, a small town rediscovers the quiet power of showing up for one another.